Well, Ward, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to have this conversation with me about Cold Zero that you have co-authored with Brad Thor. So I have really, really enjoyed this book and just a tremendously engaging narrative. You know, a lot of books, I'll kind of get into my reading chair in a quiet environment and so my concentration isn't disturbed. But the narrative in your book has been so powerful. I can sit with Fox News or whatever going on in the background, and I'm still engaged in the story. So that's one thing that really struck me initially was that the language doesn't get in the way, so it's very well crafted, very well written. And so you come from an aviation background, is that correct?
Yeah. I was in the Air Force. I flew for 7.5 years. I flew T-33s and A-10s. I'm sure you're familiar with those.
Yeah.
And they're still around flying. And then I got out after 7.5 years, and I've been flying for an airline ever since. So
Oh, so you're still currently
for a few more weeks, I'm just about to retire here soon. I'm gonna just full-time write
congratulations.
starting
Good
next
for you.
month. Yeah, I'm ready for that.
Yeah, good for you. So this is not your first book. How many are you primarily a thriller writer? Is that primarily what you have been doing?
Yeah, I've got about 16 previous novels out. I had a short series that involved aircraft accident investigation. There was three books in that series. Done a couple standalones, but my main series involves a former Israeli assassin who ends up kind of being going into the CIA and working with them. David Slayton is his name. And that's the series I mainly have been working on. And just lately, he's kind of going into management, and I've got a new guy coming into play in that series. So yeah, that's my kind of my long running series.
Oh, very, very cool. Well, I have to admit, this is the first book that I have read that you've had any work in. And it won't be the last. That's for sure. And I really can't tell where you begin and Brad Thor ends. I mean, it's really well written, and I tend to steer away from the co-written books, and I think it's just a prejudice of mine that kind of started with the Tom Clancy series of books. I had been a really ardent Tom Clancy fan back in the day, and then when other people started to take over the franchise, I kind of felt like I can't be as good, right, as Clancy. But like I said, Cold Zero is a really well written book, and the two of you have integrated so well. Really, it reads like a book that has just been written by a single author. So I
Well,
really,
yeah, it's funny you should mention the Clancy. I'm actually writing the next Tom Clancy book. In May, Rules of Engagement comes out, and that's my next project. But yeah, Brad approached me about this project
well,
almost 2
I'm
years ago.
optimistic then because from what I see of your work here, I'll pick up that book and I'll read that. So I'm actually looking forward to that.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, Brad approached me about this a couple of years ago, and I think it was a good fit because our writing styles are very similar. And the more we got into it, the more we realized how little difference there was in kind of the way we wrote and the way we approached our writing. So it was really interesting to see that because we had kind of independently, both of us have been writing for, just a little over 20 years, and we've kind of commonly came up to these same techniques of how we approach things. And it was interesting to see that. So, one of us would, write some chapters and send it to the other, and we would, the other one would edit it, and we just kind of went back and forth like that. But, you say you probably can't tell where his writing and, lets off where mine begins. I'm not sure I could either because it is so similar. So it was good in that way. I think it was very fluid in the end. And Brad had the last say. I think he did the final round of edits on it, so it was good.
Well, that I was going to ask that question a little bit about process, like how that works. I write for Town Hall and I do some other writing, and to my mind, it seems like a really difficult task to write a novel with somebody else. So you mentioned, so would it be chapter by chapter? Like you'd write a chapter, send it over to Thor, vice versa? Is that basically how it worked?
Yeah, well, neither of us have ever done this before.
Mhm.
Going in, we were both, kind of wondering how this is going to work too. But, we talk about where we were going to take the story. We knew Brad had the overall idea, this overall idea of, an airplane going over the Arctic on a polar route and crashing with
Uh,
a valuable piece of technology on board. That was his concept. It's been kicking around in his head for many years, and he finally wanted to pursue it. And I think he picked me to write with, both because he'd read my writing and because I had an aviation background.
right.
But we would talk about where to take, the next 4, 5, 6 chapters, and then one of us would write it and then send it to the other, who would kind of edit. And once we went back and forth a couple times like that, we would do the next, 5 or 6 chapters, and we just did it in chunks. And after doing that about a dozen times, we had a book. And I think at the end, we both just rewrote it from cover to cover, and then the final editing, a lot of that Brad did. So it was seamless, because I have friends. I'm good friends with Jeff Wilson and Brian Andrews, who have been doing the Tom Clancy series lately, and they write a lot of books. It's always co-written, and I've never understood how they could do that, keep so
Right.
many projects going,
Right.
and you know, I until you do it, you never know, how you're going to go about it. But I think we kind of fell into a rhythm and it started going well. The first few chapters were a little awkward, but once we got into a rhythm, it went very well and very smoothly. So, yeah.
Really, that's really interesting to hear. So you said that you've been working full time essentially throughout your entire writing career. So, a little bit about what's your personal, I'm very curious personally about this. So, how do you discipline yourself? How do you make sure you get your writing done? Or or are you that disciplined?
I'm pretty disciplined in that I work whenever I have the time. My schedule is kind of hectic because of the airline life. And when I'm on the road, actually, that's kind of how I got into writing, because I was on the road with the airlines. I was always a reader, and I'd never really thought about writing before. But I had a lot of time. I was reading a lot, and I was in hotel rooms with not a lot to do, and I was trying to think of something productive to do. And I think I read a book that didn't really click with me at all, and I tossed it aside and said I could do better than that. Just started tinkering with my first book. And that took many years. It wasn't, I was trying to make a living out of it. So, but then I got it published, and it's been a book a year after that. So, it goes, so I just write whenever I get the time to do it. Now, a lot of times when I'm at home, it's in the morning. If I'm on the road with the airlines, it's in hotel rooms, which is actually a very good environment to write in. It's pretty quiet, not a lot of distractions. So I do it whenever I can. And I guess I'm disciplined in that way, is that if I do have spare time, that's what I do.
Mhm.
And of course, having deadlines from publishers, that kind of comes into the mix too.
Well, a book a year and working a full-time job, I mean, that's pretty impressive. Do you write, well, when you are writing, are you writing in blocks of time, like 2, 3 hours, or are the time allotments shorter for you?
Yeah, I find I write about 30 or 45 minutes, and then I'll go do something else just for a short time. And then I'll come
Mhm.
back to the writing. I like to take breaks in there, just kind of clear the head and do something different, just to tour around the house or do a jigsaw puzzle or
Right.
something that gets my mind off it. So yeah, about 30 to 45 minutes at a stretch.
Well, I don't want to give away too much of the plot, but the first couple chapters of the book, as any thriller, any good thriller, are really gripping, really action-packed, and the narrative moves forward at a constant pace throughout the book. But I think what's really going to be disturbing for a lot of people reading this, hopefully they're not reading it on an airplane, but the concept of remotely being able to utilize backdoors into specific pieces of technology. Did I assume that sort of analysis came from you with your aviation background? How plausible is that? Is that something that, I know people like if you're driving a Tesla, And there have been instances where, and some, I can't remember his name, but he was involved in the intelligence community where they speculate that his vehicle was actually taken over remotely and was crashed into a bridge abutment. So there is some precedence for this. How likely is it, do you think, in an airline type of scenario?
Airline, a Boeing or an Airbus who make the airplanes these days, their business is safety, so they have every incentive to make sure that those chips that they use are clean and don't have those back doors. But such back doors exist, and they're
Mhm.
hard to detect sometimes. Um, it's we're not keeping up with technology very well. I think I read the other day that the average car these days has over 3,000 chips in it,
Mhm.
which, that's a lot to keep track of. Every sensor in there is just everything. There's just nothing but, chips. And an airliner must have tens of thousands at least. And so to keep all of those clean, one of the things that I know the manufacturers of aircraft do to keep those things safe is they restrict the communication. In other words, like the Wi-Fi you use in the back of the airplane is firewalled from what we use in the front. It's a whole different system.
Mm.
So that, there was a guy, I think a few years ago, who claimed to have taken over an airplane with his laptop in the back. That was
Mm.
not to be the case.
Mhm.
But the possibility of that exists because it all is just digital. And the scenario I described in the book, the way it happened, I think it's not completely out of the question. It's I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen, but you have to keep it. I think part of our duty as writers is to come up with these scenarios, just to play devil's advocate and say, look, if I can think of this, so can the bad guys, and we need to
Right.
keep up our guard.
Well, you had mentioned that the Tom Clancy series, and one of the things that I really loved about Tom Clancy was how, and some people criticized him for it, was how technical heavy he was in his books. So, and I noticed in this book there isn't it's not overwhelming. There's not like an overwhelming amount of detail, especially with regard to some of the submarine movements and things like that, which I think is part of the reason why the narrative moves forward so well. But then you have someone like Tom Clancy that was very, very detailed in terms of equipment and uh, tactics and things like that. How do you strike that balance?
It is a fine line. I think there are definitely times when, Clancy went overboard. He had some research on some really interesting things that, back in Hunt for Red October, the Sosos line. I had never heard of that Sosos line before, but it was very cool to learn about it. But you have to, strike a balance between, you have different kinds of readers. You have those that want to learn every nut and bolt of something like that, and others who want the narrative, as you say, to go on. So as a writer, I tend towards, keeping it moving a little bit, I think. And I think that's the right way to go because we've all read those passages where, a writer will go on for pages and pages describing
Right,
the nuts and bolts of some technology that really is going to lose other readers. You don't want to drop anybody out. You don't want to bore any readers. So I tend towards the narrative, and Brad, I know again our writing styles are pretty similar. He likes to keep things moving. He likes to, bam, bam, bam. So you can mention these technologies and talk a little about them, but anything more than a paragraph on a specific item, I think, is probably wasted.
hmm. Well, you had mentioned that Brad's overall concept was an aircraft traversing over the Arctic with some type of technology necessary or vital to national security. Was the AI component, was that something that the both of you decided on? Was that your idea, his idea, when it came down to sort of the nuts and bolts?
Yeah, we knew there was going to be a technology component, and we really didn't settle on exactly what it was going to be for a while. We
Mm.
knew it was going to be kind of integral to the plot, but we kind of, the first, I don't know, one third of the book, we really had nailed down exactly what it was going to be. But then we
Mm.
kind of went back and it kind of narrowed down as the story went on. And when Brad and I first started talking about writing together, one of his questions to me was, are you a pantser or an outliner? A pantser being seat of the pants, do you make an outline that's detailed before you write the book, or do you just kind of know the beginning and the end and take it from there? And I said pantser because that's certainly what I am. And I could feel him kind of breathe a sigh of relief because that's what he is too.
Yeah.
And the way he puts it, and I like, is that, by being a seat of the pants, you are putting yourself in the reader's position. You don't know what's going to happen. As he
Yeah.
and I were writing it, we really didn't know what was going to happen at certain points, and we kind of had to write our way out of it and plot our way out of it. So we both enjoyed doing that. We really had a good time writing this book. I think you probably see that as you read it in parts that
Mhm,
we
mhm.
were kind of having a good time and playing with this, and I think it shows.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you stole my next question because I was going to ask about, you know, do you outline? I know he doesn't, and how that, how that would work. And I always find it. Do you agree? Do you agree that being a seat of the pants writer is in some ways much more anxiety provoking than somebody who is an outliner who kind of knows beginning to end where the book is going? Do you have
I've been doing
that?
it so long, it doesn't bother me at all. I tried to outline, I think, my second book, and it was just a mess because I kept changing the outline. Because,
Yeah,
see, answer, you get to a point in the story and you think of a better way to do it. So you want to do it that way. And I just spent more time messing with my outline, and I finally just tossed it aside and said, nah, it's not for me.
right. Well, I know this book has been, I don't know if this is the correct jargon, optioned, I guess, by Netflix.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
correct. So was the book optioned before it was even published? Because I think
Yes.
this stuff's been in the works for quite some time, correct?
We've been working on it for a little over a year now. Brad has good connections in Hollywood, and he was able to get an early version of it. I don't even know what format, but he got it to some people on Netflix that he knew, and they just jumped on it right away. Said we love this thing, and we want to option it from you, and that's where it is. He can tell you more about the film. That's kind of his
Mhm.
expertise, who all is
Okay.
involved, and exactly where it is. So he's kind of running that deal. But yeah, it's really exciting, and it's unusual to have a book like this option before it even is released.
Yeah,
So
right.
yeah, that's great to that's happened.
Well, I know Carr's first book was actually optioned before it was released. So it's really interesting to see the same thing happen with this book. So yeah, I'll ask Brad more about that. That's really exciting news, I think, for both of you. Do you see that impacting your career, your writing career significantly?
Yeah. I mean, Brad is, a very successful author. I mean, I'm
Right.
certainly gonna, expose myself to a lot of his readers, which I think is good. So yeah, I think it's gonna help. I'm doing this Tom Clancy book, which is gonna help as well.
Mhm.
So, but I'm still gonna write my own stuff. Once I finish with what we're working on now, yeah, I'm supposed to do another of my own books at the end of this year. So that's the plan. And that'll come out in 27 next year. So
Is this your first Clancy book?
yes, yes.
Okay.
It may be my only one, at least for now. Mike Woodward is going to take it over after me, the main Jack Ryan series. I just kind of filled in because there were some scheduling snafus and they just needed somebody to do a book and fill in. So
Well, I was going to ask, so how did that come about? How did your name come up?
I knew Brian and Jeff Andrews and Wilson, who were writing it now, and they hit a snag in their schedule and they were just overwhelmed. So, and I know the editor at Putnam, Tom
Mhm.
Colgan, and
Yeah.
he was
Mhm.
familiar with my writing. So I think he just saw me and I had some availability on my schedule. So I said, yeah, I mean, I'd be honored to do it. I read for The Hunt for Red October 40 years ago, never thinking that I was gonna, and it was an amazing book. I mean, I was
Oh
really
yeah.
taken by it
Yeah.
and never thinking that I was going to write book number 27 in the series. I never saw
Yeah.
that one coming.
That has to be very surreal to write for a franchise as
Yeah,
iconic as Clancy. So when is
totally.
that book due to come out?
That one comes out May 19th.
In May. All right. Yeah, I definitely want to get a hold of that one because I really have enjoyed Cold Zero. It's a great book, and I people are going to want to read this book, and I don't want to get too much into the plot 'cause I don't want to do any spoilers or anything like that. But yeah, I just really commend you and Brad for the work that you did in collaboration to produce this book. Let me ask you this: Are you so as far as the Netflix series goes? Do you have much input? Are you going to have much input with the next? I know the book is the book, the series is a series, are two totally different animals. But do you foresee any significant input with the screenwriting, perhaps?
Yeah, I'd like to have, and I know Brad also wants to be involved. I don't think it's far enough along where they don't have everybody identified who's going to be involved, who's going to be doing the screenwriting. So until they nail all that down, it's hard to say. But yeah, I certainly would like to be, and I know Brad would be as well.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's good. I know that process is notoriously capricious. So until it's actually, streaming, my
Yeah,
my wife is the communications director for Andy Andrews, and he has a book that has been in production for like I don't know. I guess production is the right word for going on 2 years now. So that's kind of the little window I've gotten into some of the filmmaking or
yeah.
series making process. So well, I hope that this progresses without delay because based on the book, I think the series is going to be outstanding. And if you guys have input on the screenwriting, that stuff is so important to a show. I'm sure you've watched many shows. First season starts off great. They end up switching around some of the writing talent, and the magic just
Yeah,
isn't there.
yeah. Yeah, Brad is very cinematic when he writes. That's one of the things I've
Yeah.
noticed. It is a difference between us. He was his education. He's a film major back from in USC
Mm,
back in the day,
yeah.
and it's funny when he and I talk. It's kind of a running joke between us. He'll always give movie references when we're talking about plots and what you want to do. And he'll, did you ever see? And my answer is usually no, because
No.
he's seen more movies than I have. So you can ask him about that. But
Yeah, I'll definitely ask
yeah, I
about
think we definitely want to be involved, and we're hoping this all comes to pass. Yeah.
that. Good, good. Well, I know we've got kind of a hard out here, and it has been a real pleasure talking to you. And I certainly am going to be reading more of your work. And like I said, this is the first book I've seen any of your work in, and it's very good. It's very, very good. Um,
Thank you.
is there anything that that you wanted to get into with regard to the book itself? Was there something that you wanted to communicate in particular?
This is the first time Brad and I have tried to collaborate with someone else, and I think it went very well. Again, I think we had a good time with this book, and we've all gotten good reviews before, but the reviews we've gotten on this book seem really wholeheartedly. People really enjoyed it. They just find it very entertaining. So I hope that that's the truth. I hope that carries forward, and that we can give some good entertainment to a lot of readers out there, both his and mine.
Well, I can personally attest to the truthfulness of the positive reviews that you guys have been seeing. I've caught a few of them that you've posted on X, Instagram, I think too. So, and I agree with all the positive comments that both of you have been getting on this book. So, Cold Zero is well worth the time. I think that's one of the important things that that's communicated to people that it is worth their time, especially in this environment where you've got so many distractions and
Yes, we do.
yeah. So this is definitely worth the time. So. Well, I really appreciate your time, speaking of time, and I definitely will be reading more of your work, and hopefully we can stay in touch and have some further discussions, maybe about your contribution in the summer to the Tom Clancy franchise. Would love to talk to you about that as well.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, sounds good. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, John.
Brad Thor, well, thank you so much again for taking time out of your busy schedule to discuss a unique book, I think, which is Cold Zero.
Thank you. Glad you
Outstanding.
like it.
Yes, outstanding book and unique in that I think this is the first book that you've co-written with anybody else.
Hmm.
So that dynamic has to be very, very different. And I just talked with your co-author Ward Larson about some of those issues. Well, not issues, but some of those differences, I guess, that come up when you're writing a book with someone else, and that really kind of baffles me. I don't know how I would do that. I mean, he explained the process somewhat.
Hmm.
So I guess you write a chapter, you send it over to him, he writes a chapter, he sends it to you, and then back and forth, and you guys kind of work it out. Is that more or less how that happens?
It is, but that's what it looks like when the plane's in the sky. There's all getting the plane out of the hangar, getting it onto the runway,
Right,
and getting it down the
right.
runway and getting to lift, getting it to take off. So there's a lot of communication that goes on before we start writing. So what we do is, so I'd had this idea for years that I wanted to do, and my editor had said, "Listen, this all comes down to not only finding a great writer, but finding a great human being, somebody that you enjoy spending time with." And Ward is definitely,
Interesting.
yeah, definitely a person whose company I enjoy. So I had gone through a bunch of thriller authors who I liked that I thought might be open to this. And I actually did not want somebody who had co-written before. And so I was going through my list. Ward was on there. He was the only one with a Scandinavian last name. So I figured, okay, perfect. I'm going to do I'm going to do my own version of DEI, which is going to be a Scandinavian
Yeah,
hire.
right.
And it'll be Thor and Larson. If we start a business together, we'll have a big Viking longboat as our logo.
Yeah.
Uh, anyway, I've been a big fan of Ward's for a while, and I like his service to the nation. The A-10 Warthog is one of my favorite fighter
Yeah.
planes of all time, and he flew that. And he's just a very good, like, as you know, even keeled guy. He's real cool,
Yeah.
calm under pressure. So we spend a lot of time talking about the idea, and then he's not an outliner, and I'm not an outliner. We're
Right.
both pantsers. So what we would do is we would talk about the first 6, 8, 10 chapters max and say it should happen like this and go like this, and then we go off our separate ways. We'd have our chapters, we'd come back together, and I would read his stuff, he'd read mine, and we'd talk about, okay, how do we make this better? Because I'm a big fan of take the first four things that come into your head and throw them out.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think if I can think of four things immediately that would happen in this situation, what is the average reader doing? They're likely catching two, if not three, maybe all four of those potentials. So I want to surprise everybody, and Ward's the same way. In fact, we have something that happens towards the end of the book where we'd originally talked about doing it one way. And then I said, actually, if you think I'm very cinematic, I'm a big movie guy. I've seen probably 30 times the movies Ward has ever seen. I'm like,
Yeah, he
everybody I
mentioned
know in the
that.
military, yeah, everybody I know has seen a ton of movies. Ward, I think he's always been just a fabulous reader of books. And so I said, well, imagine this scene if we were watching it in a movie. You kind of want a rug pull here. You want people to think it's going this way, and then you want to yank the rug out from underneath them. And he goes, oh, actually, I hadn't thought of that. You're right. We should do it that way. And we did. And what's funny, and I'm not going to, no spoilers here, but
Mhm.
one of the early reviewers said, and there's this one scene at the end that'll absolutely take your breath away. And that's the one where Ward and I had that. So every experience, John, was like that. It was good. It was positive. We weren't, coming to fisticuffs over issues in the plot. I got very lucky. And I think I have to attribute that not only to Ward being just, like I said, a fantastic human being, but also my editor saying, find a great person to work with and you'll be thankful, and you'll enjoy the process more. And that's for sure what happened.
Did it stretch out the process? I mean, I know both of you tend to do a book a year, right? So did this back and forth, the collaboration, did that add any to the timeline?
Not to the actual timeline of this book. We said we needed to get it done within a year, and we put a date on it to have a first draft done. And Ward's like me; he's very, Ward's former military. I'm the son of a United States Marine. We were big about being on time, on target with
Mhm.
everything we did, and we knew we'd have to leave a certain amount of space for editing. But by the time Ward and I got done polishing it and gave it to my editor, there was nothing for her to do.
Mm.
So we lucked out, I think, in that we had a fun idea. We really enjoyed writing it. It was exciting for us. We edited as we went along
Mhm.
because the chapters were going back and forth.
Mhm.
That actually served as rough draft turning into a polished second draft, if you will, because he'd read stuff, catch typos or missing words. I'd do the same. So as we were writing, we were editing at the same time, if that makes sense,
Yeah, sure.
because of that going back and forth. So if I wasn't writing, I was editing the stuff I got from Ward and vice versa. So it really worked out well. But it means that if you look at a 50-50 collaboration, John, I was writing my solo Harvath book.
Mm.
He actually, after I asked him to do a book with me, Ward got picked up by the Clancy estate, which is
Right.
interesting, to write a Clancy. So he had to tell the Clancy people, hey, listen, I'll do this Clancy thing for you after I finish Cold Zero with Brad. But while he was doing Cold Zero with me, he's got his own series that he's working on. So Ward and I were both in that year time span. We were both working on our own series book. So we, like, in a space of a year, we each wrote a book and a half, if that makes sense. I wrote a full Harvath, I did
Yeah.
half a Cold Zero, and
Mm.
then Ward did his. So, but just great experience. I'm very thankful for how well it went, and I mean, the proof is in the pudding. Reviewers have loved it. Netflix is turning it into a massive action movie that they say is going to
Yep.
be bigger, better, and more badass than Hunt for Red October. So it's cool.
Oh, wow. Well,
Yeah,
there's a little taste of Red October, a little bit,
with submarines and
in
stuff in
it.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, right. Uh, but I felt bad when I was talking to Ward because I was actually complimenting both of you with regard to the co-written book. And
Hmm.
I've been a longtime fan of Tom Clancy, but then when other authors stepped in to start writing Clancy, uh, I didn't trust it, right?
Right. Yeah.
And but I said this book has restored my faith in some of these co-authored
Mm.
books. So I'm busting on these.
On the Clancy stuff, and he's done a
Yeah.
Clancy. Yeah, no, that's he
Yeah.
gets it though. He'll take that for what it's meant to be. The big thing with me, bottom line in this, is that I'm going out to my existing customers with a co-written book, and it had to be as good as the stuff I write on my own.
Yeah.
So people had to, I liken, John, what I do to having an amusement park,
Mhm.
and every year I introduce a new roller coaster in
Mhm.
my amusement park. And that's a Scott Harvath book. You get a new roller coaster.
Right.
And now I said, well, what if I could co-design and co-build a roller coaster with somebody else? It's got to be as good as all of the roller coasters that I build myself every year.
Mhm.
And so that was where the bar was set for us. But that's an easy bar to set with Ward Larson because he holds himself to such a high degree of creative excellence.
Mhm.
So when you've got somebody that disciplined and that committed to their craft, I don't want to say it was easy because it wasn't easy. Writing a book is hard work, but it was. I don't know that I could have had a better experience out of the gate with a co-author, and I know he had a good time doing it as well. And we're already working on another project together for
Oh,
2027.
very cool. Well, you
Yeah.
you can tell you guys had fun writing this book. That comes through. So, but why? Tell me, why do a co-author? Both of you have, a great catalog of books already. So why do this co-authored thing?
Well, so number one, the number one thing I hear from all my fans is I don't write fast enough. So there was no way I could write. One year I did two books in one year. I did a Scott Harvath book, and then I wrote about an all-female Delta Force team called the Athena Project, and
Right.
that was two books in one year, and that really took it out of me to do two because writing is for large parts of writing, it is a very solitary experience. It's just you and your keyboard. But when you're co-writing with somebody else, there's a lot of creative energy back and forth. You're not
Yeah.
alone in your head the whole time. And so I thought, boy, wouldn't it be cool as long as we could keep that quality level up? So that roller coaster is just as exciting, just as engaging as one of my Scott Harvath ones. I said, let me give this a whirl. I suppose it's the same reason that people have, you got a steakhouse and everybody loves your steakhouse. And they're like, gosh, it'd be nice if we could open a second location. it would be great because we can never get in on a Friday night sort of
Yeah.
a thing.
Mhm.
So I think there's a bit of the business side of it, of wanting to give my readers and my fans another thrill during the year to basically put a book in front of them every 6 months. One
Mhm.
would be a Scott Harvath solo Brad Thor book, and another one now is this Cold Zero. I think that's part of what drove it too. And the other thing is I've got so many ideas that I will never be able to get out in book form, and not all of them are Scott Harvath stories. So
Yeah.
like this one I've had for years. And so for me as a creative person, I suppose it's like, yeah, I used to think that people's love of Picasso was insane. I used
Mhm.
to think it was just crazy because I looked at his stuff, his later stuff, and thought it was garbage. I
Mhm.
thought, kindergartners could do the kinds of drawings that he did.
Right. Mhm.
And then when I went to Barcelona for the first time and I went to the Picasso Museum and I saw the paintings that he did as a classically trained painter, I went, oh my gosh,
Right.
this guy is so incredibly talented. And I understand now, having spent decades as a working artist, that it's nice to break out of the normal stuff you do. I
Mhm.
didn't want to go write romance books or sports books. I wanted to stay in the thriller genre, but I wanted to experience a thriller through the eyes of somebody other than Harvath. I love Harvath, but I
Mhm.
wanted to see what is a young female CIA operative and an ex-fighter pilot, which is what our two protagonists are. How
Right.
do they deal with this? And I've already put Harvath in an Arctic situation a couple of times. I put him in Siberia. I put him up on Svalbard, north of Norway.
Yep.
And I've been fascinated with the fact that so many commercial airliners go over the North Pole to save time and
Right.
fuel,
Mhm.
and we've never lost one. And
Mhm.
I thought, what if one went down up there? What would
Right.
that be like? And what if there was something on board that plane that the US wanted to recover first, and so did the Russians and Chinese? And so there's this race to the crash site to recover this secret item on the plane.
Mhm.
And that's the idea for Cold Zero. So that was not something I was ever going to do as a Harvath book. So there's multiple reasons why.
Well, all very good reasons, from the way that you explain it. So you talk about all these ideas. So where does that come from? Where does this, your idea generator, where does that come from?
I tell people the ideas come from when I'm standing in a hot shower or after the second glass of bourbon. Those are the two times. That's when I'm really relaxed. I think it was Stephen King who said a writer is someone who's trained their mind to misbehave.
Uh-huh.
So I think it's just I'm open to the muse. The more open you are, Stephen Pressfield wrote a great book called The
Yeah.
War of
Yes.
Art.
Yep.
And it's I recommend it to anybody who's in any creative field. And he talks a lot about the more open you are to the muse, the more often the muse will appear. And I've just always been a storyteller, an idea person since I was a little kid. I've looked at things and said, okay, that's what it says on the news. But what if you looked at it from the back way in?
Mhm.
How might the story be different? I wrote a book. My third thriller was called State of the Union. And the concept behind that was, what if we didn't win the Cold War? We only thought we did.
Mhm.
That the Soviets rolled over and played dead, realizing that they would get flooded with international aid, that there would be all of these markets that would open to them. And what if a key group of Soviets kind of stayed true to Soviet doctrine, but again, played possum? So I'm constantly, writers are a little bit weird, I guess, in that sense that we're always imagining, we're always dreaming, and these ideas are, at least in my case, constantly coming in inbound.
So do you try not to prejudge? Do you just like, do you try not to, well, that was a stupid idea, or do you just have an idea and kind of put it on the back burner and maybe develop, and then one day, like this book, I guess has been percolating for years, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's some, particularly after the second glass of bourbon, I may wake up in the morning and look at my notes and say, actually, not a good idea. No amount of percolating is going to make that idea better. It's funny. I enjoy really good TV, and TV is the writing, the level of writing in TV over like the last 10 years has been incredible. And one of my favorite shows ever was Ray Donovan with Lee Schreiber, and
Mhm.
I loved Ray Donovan. That he's this fixer, and he's this tough Boston guy, and then he goes out to L.A. and everything, and every single thing that he gets involved with goes sideways, goes wrong. And I've sat in front of episodes of Ray Donovan while I'm writing my Scott Harvath books, and it has inspired me to improve my own writing, to
Right.
not make things easy, to actually make things hard, to continually paint my protagonist into a corner
Mhm.
where even when I leave the office that night, I don't know how he's going to get out of that. In fact, the joke in my family is my wife can tell if it's going to be a cup of coffee morning or a pot of coffee morning the next day based on how stressed I come home from the office because I've put Harvath in such a difficult corner. But I think there's an old saying that goes, "Easy reading is damn hard writing," and
Yes.
that's true. It's a hard job, but I love it.
Yep. Have you seen Black Rabbit?
I started watching about the bar restaurant,
Yeah.
and it's with Jude Law, right?
Yeah.
And
Did you
his
not
brother
get
comes back.
into it?
I watched a couple episodes of it, and I cannot remember, something went on, and we put a pause on it. But yeah, I've watched a couple episodes of that.
I thought it was really well written, and you were talking about well written shows.
Mhm.
I think that's one of them. Black Rabbit. And if you have a chance to go back and restart it, I think it's worth your time doing it. One little thing in your book I was very curious about. So everybody thinks that the bat phone to the White House is a red phone, but you have it written as a blue phone, and I'm just curious. Is that factual? Is that some artistic license that you've taken,
It.
or
I've
what?
seen
Maybe
it.
if that was your idea, I don't know whose idea it was.
Yeah, I can't remember. I have to go back and look in our notes, and because I've been in the White House and I've seen a couple of different colors
Mhm.
of things in the White House, so I'd have to go back and actually see if that was a Ward thing or if that was a me thing, and then I'd have to look at my notes and say, okay, is that something that I recalled, or did I actually ask somebody who worked
Yeah,
in the White House? Because I've got lots of, like, a former national security advisor is a really good friend of mine, and he'll tell me what's appropriate to tell me, and then there's a lot of stuff he's like, I can't tell you that.
sure, sure.
So,
That was just one little detail I was just curious about because everybody assumes, oh, we're gonna have to pick up the red phone,
right.
White House.
Commissioner Gordon,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Well, I see AI popping up more and more in thriller, well, not just thrillers, but fiction in general. And what used to be very science fiction is now science fact, as the old saying goes. I think maybe Asimov said that, or one of those guys.
Yeah.
Do you? I mean, of course, it plays a part in your book, but I'm sure you see that as a continuing trend. Do you foresee that being a thematic element in your writing going forward, or?
Yeah, I think it's going to become ubiquitous relatively soon. I think it's going to be something in the background we all take for granted. I
Mm,
wanted to get in and out of a book with AI as quickly as possible
mm,
because it's just so many people are flooding in there. It's become this magic wand that you can wave that can do all kinds of things. In our book, we applied it to kind of to the battle space
mhm.
in what applications AI might have with a unit in the field, sort of a thing. And that's the MacGuffin in our book, is a piece of AI technology that the Chinese have invented that their lead scientist wants to defect with, and that's what's on the airplane that everybody is rushing for. So yeah, I think AI is here to stay. We're going to hear a lot about it. I'm sure for people like Le Carre and Freddie Forsyth, as computers started becoming more and more powerful and things like that in their day during the Cold War, I'm sure that impacted a lot of their writing. Uh, but yeah, I'm starting to see AI everywhere, and so I as a writer, I thought that was perfect for this story, but it's not something I want to pursue. If I could avoid talking about AI in the future, that's my goal. I would love that. Yeah.
Well, I know we don't have a whole lot of time left. I want to ask you about the Netflix series. So that's big news. I was really excited to hear about that. And now having read the book, I'm even more excited. So is there a timeline to release date, or are we still too early?
So it's a movie, not a series. It'll
Oh, a
be a
movie.
movie,
Okay.
and so it's Pete Berg that picked it up. And Pete is a producer director. He works with Ezra Emanuel, who's also a wonderful, wonderful producer. And so Pete did Lone Survivor, Marcus Luttrell's story
Right. Mhm.
with Wahlberg. Pete loves Wahlberg. He's made a cajillion movies. Mile 22. I think it was a Deepwater Horizon or Horizon Event is the Wahlberg one that's on the oil platform. Patriot Day he did with Wahlberg, but he
Yep.
also did one of my favorite ones. And as a former FBI agent, I bet you know this one, which is The Kingdom with Jamie Foxx and
Oh
Jennifer
yeah.
Garner, when
Hmm.
there was the terrorist attack at a compound in I believe it was Riyadh. And
Hmm.
so that was a great movie. I loved that movie.
Yeah.
So then of course Pete has got a series now on Netflix called American Primeval, which is a fabulous kind of mountain western thing. And as somebody who lived in Utah for a long time, and both his children were born in Utah, it was pretty cool to see the Mormons as the bad guys in that series. That was very interesting. And Pete said the Mormons got a little bit upset with him, and he said, "Listen, I got the whole idea after visiting the Mormon Church in Salt Lake City, and I bought this book about these wars with the Indians
Mhm.
at the church gift shop." He's
Right.
like, "So you can't get mad at me. This is
Right.
part of Mormon history." So anyway, he's fabulous. And the writer of the screenplay for the movie is this fabulous guy named Nick Pizzolatto, and Nick is the creator of True Detective and the writer of True Detective. So season one was Woody Harrelson and Matthew McConaughey, and the most recent series, all set up in Alaska, was Jodie Foster was the lead in that. It's just I love those shows. He's a great writer. He's like a David Mamet level writer. He's that good.
So are we likely to see Wahlberg in this movie?
I don't know. It'll depend. That gets to be Pete and Ezra will be able to decide. That's their call.
Well, so are you going to have input in terms of script writing? Are you and Ward going to have input, or is that
Not on the screenplay. If it was a TV show, it would be different. But
right?
there's one guy writing the screenplay, and that'll be Nick, and he's awesome. He's awesome. I've written a couple of screenplays and stuff, but I'm nowhere near as talented in that
Mm.
format as Nick is. So we'll get to read it, and we'll get to say, here's this, maybe this would happen, or you did this on page 10. This is the ripple effect it would have on page 60. Just so you know, this would happen if the plane landed on this side, all the fuel in that wing would do X. It'd be little technical
Oh
things
yeah.
just to point
Mhm.
out, you know what I mean? Or, if this signal went up and it was received by the NSA, this is where the call would be routed. If you guys are cutting Hollywood corners, they call it movie magic because you don't
Uh-huh.
want to show every step. We get it. But just understand when you dial that phone, this is who that person is calling when they're on that desk at 2 in the morning and this signal comes in, that kind of stuff, just
Right.
technical assistance.
Well, I don't think. Did you? What about timeline? Do we know when the movie's coming out?
No clue. No clue. We just made the deal with Netflix right around Christmas time. So that was great. So now what happens is Nick has to write the screenplay,
Mhm.
and then Netflix will put their notes, their stamp on it. They'll say change this, change that, and then once they say okay, this is great, we're ready to go, they'll then have a line producer that goes through it, and they'll work on establishing the budget. And they're talking about this being like even bigger than Hunt for Red October. So the line producer person will go through, look at what the cost will be. They'll start talking about locations, all that kind of stuff. They'll figure out the budget to get everything rolling, and then all the pre-production starts. But everything hinges upon the screenplay being written and then finally approved by
Mhm.
Netflix. So I hope by this summer we'll know what we're doing.
Well, I'm really excited for you, and like I said, having read the book, I'm even more interested in seeing the movie. So,
Yeah.
I know you've got something else
Actually,
following
it
this.
started 5 minutes ago at 11 o'clock. So I'm sorry, but I'm happy if you want to catch up again a little bit more. We could
Oh
do
yeah.
that.
Well,
Um,
I definitely want to talk to you again, especially when we get closer to the movie release date. And
Absolutely.
I'm sure there'll be another Harvath book long before that. So,
June 16th, Choke Point coming out June 16th. So I'm
oh,
sure we'll
Choke
talk
Point. All
again.
right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Brad, I really appreciate your time as always, and it's
Thanks, John.
always a pleasure talking to you. So, thanks again, and
My pleasure.
we'll be talking to you soon.